Okay, today is Friday, and it is October the 2nd, and we are going to continue with chapter 3, and this will be 3B, I do believe. I don't think that we'll get through all of the material today, but certainly I think today and then one more uh, lecture, and we should be pretty close to being at the end of chapter 3. Hopefully, I have everything in place. Just a sec. Yep. Uh, Sorry about that, but I wanted to make sure that Jabber wasn't going to start ringing. When that starts, I just sort of panic and have trouble getting it to turn off. So we shouldn't be interrupted by Jabber today, and we shouldn't be interrupted by my phone. I've got my ringer off, so we're good to go. We are picking up with stage 2 of Piaget's 4 stages of intellectual development. And with that, in talking about pre-operational thought, which is the second stage, and it's 2 to 7 years, we know that our kiddos in preschool, which would be those 3 to 5-year-olds, and even in kindergarten, they really thrive on hands-on experiences. They thrive on consistency. They thrive on structure and practice. And one of my favorite phrases, and I don't think that I've ever said this to my online students, is consistency, structure, and routine equals predictability. And for kids, that's vital for managing behavior, keeping their days calm. Now, you're going to have days when it's not going to work. But that consistency, structure, and routine makes the day predictable. And when we talk about changing behavior, we talk about our kiddos with a diagnosis of ASD. We know that these kiddos with autism like consistency, structure, and routine because it is predictable. It's predictable. When you have no structure, well, in a good example of that, consistency, structure, and routine, is the parent who, while I'm interviewing them, I ask them, do you have a bedtime routine? Because sleep deprivation does not facilitate language development. Sleep deprivation is not good for anyone, regardless of your age. But children who have these dark circles under their eyes and they just can't seem to, and they're irritable. Now, they're not maybe behavior problems, but they're just irritable. And you just can't seem to get them to focus. And life is not good. And they tell me, oh, no, can't get him to bed at night. Where does he sleep? Well, I just let him sleep wherever he falls. So, okay. So if he's sitting on the floor and he's playing with a truck or a car or something, and he lays down and he just happens to go to sleep, you just leave him there? Oh, yeah, I don't want to wake him up. Then I may not be able to get him back to sleep. Well, I understand that. Okay. What time does he usually fall asleep? Oh, it's just whenever he runs out of steam. Could be 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, could be 1 o'clock. So that means the parent's up. That means the parent has sleep deprivation. So I try and introduce some kind of bedtime routine. So it may be that we start, let's say that the goal is to have this child in bed by 9:30. Now, that could be a pretty lofty goal when this child, let's say, is 5 and they've been able to do what they want, play as long as they want. Um, Nobody's asking them to do anything. There are no expectations. They don't like to take a bath or a shower. It's a lofty goal. I'll agree with you. So we start out, and maybe I say, okay, well let's work on a schedule. And so the schedule might include a snack. Sitting down, having a snack while mom reads a story. Sitting on the sofa, has something to drink, a healthy snack, and mom's reading a story. And let's say that after the child has their snack, on the list, mom's going to read another story. And then let's say the next thing on the list is we're going to go to the child's bedroom, or wherever they sleep, and we're going to get our jammies, and we're going to go into the bathroom and run the bath water. Well, while we're running the bath water, then the next item on the list is the child gets to pick out some toys to play with in the bathtub. So we fill the bathtub and the toys go in and mom is in there and the child's in the bathtub and maybe you have a cup and you're pouring. Look at the language that can be going on. We're dipping, we're pouring, we have bubbles, we have, we can slap the water, we can put our hands under the water, um, we can squirt water out of that little toy. You may have letters of the alphabet up on the side of the tub. Just lots of different language things that can go on. Then I say to mom, okay, give the child a signal that in 5 minutes he will get out of the tub and he'll dry off and put his jammies on. So you say, in 5 minutes, it will be time to get out of the bathtub and dry off and get your jammies on. And then maybe it's only been 30 seconds, and then you say, oh, in 3 minutes, it'll be time to get out of the bathtub and dry you off and get your jammies on. And then maybe you wait a minute and you go, okay, it's time to get out of the bathtub. And you hit the release on the water begins to go, you get the tub, the towel, and you lift the child out of the tub. Now, in a realistic world, that child may not be ready to get out of the tub, but if you move swiftly and go through those motions, okay, it's in 2 minutes we're going to get out of the tub. I'm going to let the water go down the drain and I'll dry you off. So you've set the stage, and that's what you do. Now, the child may fuss and carry on, maybe not. Then you dry him off, you get the jammies on. Okay, now we're going to go lay down and we'll read 2 more books and you get to pick them out. And the child picks out 2 books, and maybe he doesn't pick out 2 books. Maybe you give him a choice between 2 books. You want this book or this book? Which one? And I don't want a book. Well, touch the one you want. And you take the books close to him. Maybe touch, oh, good job. You picked this book. Now let's find another one. And so you continue on. You're moving forward in the direction that you established. And then you get into the bed and you lay down or sit up or whatever, and you begin reading the book. You've got that book in front of you, and the child is huffing and puffing and maybe not in bed, and you're reading that book and you're looking at the pictures and you're going, oh my gosh, how did he do that? You turn a page. You're holding the book. Oh, wow, I like that. Child can't see the pictures. Has no idea what you're talking about. You turn the page. Oh, that is so sweet. And then the child eventually comes over and wants to see the pictures. And then you can continue, hopefully, and engage them in the story. Again, you prepare them for bedtime. Okay, we have one more story, and then it's time to go to bed. I'll leave the light on, but you can sit in here and look at another book for a while. So, you've set the stage. You have the structure. You have the steps, and maybe you have to write those steps down, and you have to let the child check off the steps that come along. But the point is, consistency, structure, and routine equals the predictability that a child needs in order to function at their best. And sleep is going to be one of those particular behaviors that they need to have. Now, then it can carry over to school, because the child goes into school. They put their things in their cubby. They may get to play at different stations in the room. The teacher, in about 30 minutes, lets them know that it's time to go to the circle. They sit down on the circle, and maybe they sing a good morning song. They look at the calendar and talk about the month, the day, the year, and if there's anything special on the calendar, like someone's birthday. They talk about the weather. Then maybe it's time for a snack. So they have this routine, this schedule. So when the teacher says snack time, go to the table, the child can predict what they're expected to do. Consistency, structure, and routine equals predictability. Chaos doesn't result in predictability. It results in chaos. So you have to have consistency, structure, and routine. And that's how children learn, especially in those early stages. And this pre-operational thought stage is 2 to 7 years. Big difference between 2 years and 7 years. Big difference between 2 years and 3 years. But the child is learning words at a rapid rate. And you may have heard me say that. Vocabulary explodes. It explodes. And at 2, we should begin to hear some early 2-word phrases. And once they begin to string those words together, there's no stopping them. Pre-operational thought, 2 to 7 years, routine, consistency, structure equals predictability. We're still expecting hands-on learning in kindergarten and the first grade. We may begin, and we still have that in second grade, certainly. We know that printed material is taking its place in terms of literacy. They have worksheets, and I think in today's educational system, we're not using those worksheets like we used to. The child is still egocentric. It's still all about them. However, they're beginning to be sympathetic to somebody else's needs, somebody else's desires, and have some empathy or sympathy for others. Concrete operations is 7 to 11 years. We're teaching reading and writing hopefully they're making progress, and they've got the good foundation for reading. Letter sound association. being able to sound out words, sound blend. They've got to have that foundation in order to learn to read. Now remember, a child who is preschool, first grade, and even into second grade, learning to read. Learning to read. The focus is learning to read with the letters of the alphabet, that sound letter association, sound blending, phonemic awareness, learning to read. Now, get to third grade, we get to fourth grade, they're reading to learn. Vocabulary is more difficult. They have words that maybe they've never heard before in the areas of science, social studies, computers. They are expected to be more independent, take down assignments. Maybe they have a schedule book, expected to write down assignments, expected to write down, I need to read pages 1 through 10 in my social studies book. I have my project due next week on Thursday. So we're teaching them to be more independent. We expect them to be able to work without as much assistance. But I'll tell you, if the child has not learned the foundation for reading, they will struggle. I know in the clinic, when I was supervising diagnostic, it was not uncommon for a child to get referred to the clinic for an evaluation in the third grade, third, fourth grade. We were seeing them pretty regularly. So within that case history interview with the parent, I would ask, well, tell me how he does in school. What's his best subject? What's his worst subject? What are his grades like? And grades in kindergarten, they weren't too bad. You know, he had some A's and B's. First grade, couple A's, more B's and C's. Second grade, about the same. And then consistently, the grades would get worse. Reading, spelling. If you can't read, you can't spell, you can't write. So this child didn't have the foundation. Well, now in the state of Indiana, we're recognizing dyslexia, which we didn't many years ago. I think dyslexia was probably put under learning disabilities. Maybe it was a language processing problem, language literacy processing problem. But now the state of Indiana says we have to recognize those kids with dyslexia. We have to evaluate them and we have to treat them. And so now, is dyslexia going to be the term of choice? You know, sort of like the drink of the day, the sandwich of the day. Is it going to be dyslexia? Well, we may see that. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but I think we have missed these kids. We have failed them in some way when they didn't learn the basics. There is a program called Orton Gillingham, and it is the program of choice, the strategy of choice for teaching children with dyslexia. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. There happens to be a couple who lives in the Muncie area that does tutoring in Orton Gillingham. I do know a couple of parents who have had their children tutored in Orton Gillingham, and they sing its praises. I do think that some teachers have had the training, and there is training in the Orton Gillingham method of teaching reading. And so I do think that it's a need, and I think teachers see that it's a need, and parents certainly see that it's a need for their children. Teachers continue to teach reading and writing. We know that these kiddos in the concrete operation stage, the 7 to 11 years, They are developing logical thinking, but not so much abstract yet. The formal operation stage is 11 to 15. They're using their minds a little bit more. It is more cerebral, if you will. They can create their own ideas. They can generate stories. They can draw conclusions. Now, you've got these adolescents who are, um, I call them aliens. I think that we've got the little ones, and we get the terrible twos, and they're kind of like little aliens. And then things kind of level off, and they're sweet, and they're talking, and all of a sudden they hit puberty, and they're aliens again. And sometimes parents will say, I never had a problem until we went to high school. Well, it's the hormones, maybe. I don't know. But in the formal operations, 11 to 15 years, they are drawing conclusions. Teachers who have a good grasp of developmental milestones from birth through adolescence. Do you know what typical development is? You've got to understand typical development before you can recognize if something is atypical and causing this child not to learn like they should or at the rate that they should. If you have a good grasp of developmental milestones from birth through adolescence, this is important, you have a treasure trove available for making learning fun, productive, and developmentally appropriate. So, well, where do I go? How do I find these developmental milestones? Google it. Now, what I will tell you, you're not going to see too many developmental milestones past the age of 5, maybe 6, because by the time the child is 5 or 6, they should be able to speak in sentences. They should know pronouns and be using them. They should be using correct syntax or grammar. They should be using morphemes, past tense, plurals, ing. They should be able to generate a sentence with meaning. So every skill that they need, they have by the time they go to school. Now, not that they're not tweaking it, because certainly they are. Irregular verbs. Dear, dear. That's the same for singular or plural. I was trying to think. I go to the store. I went to the store. Those kinds of things. They're still continuing to learn that. Broken, not broke, in some sentences. Now, we have Hoosierisms. I'm guilty of it too, folks. I came from southern Indiana, almost the hills of Kentucky. And my daddy was going to wash the car, and he was going to put Earl in the car. Oil, by the way. Y'all come. That's the way I was raised. I was raised on the Ohio River, not a creek, a river. And so we get into some of those Hoosierisms. But our kiddos should be able to communicate effectively, making their wants and their needs known, for sure. So when you look at developmental milestones, let's say you're working with an 8-year-old who still confuses he and she, or isn't correctly using he and she, using her for she in the wrong context. Well, you look at a developmental milestone and it'll tell you when that should be in place. So she should have this. Let's work on that. And so looking at those developmental milestones will tell you a lot about where you need to go in terms of goal writing or intervention. Now, you have to look at the sequence and the progress or the process of that. Some kiddos will in terms of WH words, who, what, where, when, and why, what will be coming early in development. When the child doesn't understand when right away because it deals with time. And if they don't understand time, when isn't going to make sense to them. It's those kinds of things. So you can look at that and figure out where there are gaps in those milestones. The theory of cognitive development by Vygotsky is a relationship between cognition and language. And you've heard me talk about this. Language and cognition, they're running parallel down the road. And we're going to add perception before long and really kind of make a mess of it. But perception is just as important as the cognition and the language. Now, Vygotsky believed that the child is an active agent in his quest for knowledge, but other than that, they differ. Piaget thinks that children operate independently to construct knowledge through their actions on the environment, especially during the early stages. But Vygotsky believes that the developing child interacts with the environment in order to develop those cognitive abilities. Now, Vygotsky, he and Piaget got together and communicated about their research between 1924 and 1929. Okay, so I don't think Vygotsky's still alive, but you know that they didn't have computers. They couldn't talk to each other. And Stalin was in rule, and so they were really stifled in their ability to talk to their colleagues, to talk about their research. But Vygotsky's belief was that children have to learn through experiences. Experiential learning is by far the best. And his parents must have had some money or position or something because he had a tutor and his learning was based on experiences. Feeling, touching, seeing, smelling, and that's how he learned. And experiential learning was his background. He had a tutor, and he was really pretty progressive in that. Vygotsky's view really is supportive of the social interactionist, where you're looking at the environment as being very important, but you also have some genetics that play an important part in that as well. He was sort of maybe a behaviorist at heart because of his nature base and interest and what learning did for him. Okay, we're going to talk about Vygotsky's private speech. Vygotsky thinks that important people in the child's life are vital for their development of cognition. And cognition doesn't occur in isolation. It doesn't occur in a vacuum. There have to be experiences in both the environment, in culture, and in socialization. Those experiences all lend some influence to the cognition. The groundwork is laid for the component of Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development, and it's most closely associated with private speech. Now, that's Vygotsky. Piaget called it egocentric speech. Vygotsky called it private speech, and Piaget called it egocentric speech. And another difference too, Piaget believed that cognitive development proceeded in a very predictable stage-by-stage manner. Vygotsky, he believed that cognitive development did not proceed exactly in the same progressive sequence for all children. It's continuous, but it may not be stage by stage. Vygotsky thought that when children talk to themselves, they're guiding themselves through their actions. And it's to help themselves think through an activity or a problem and solve it. And I see that happening with kids all the time. Okay, they want to build one of those wooden birdhouses that they sell in a kit at Lowe's. And so they're looking at the picture of the birdhouse and they say, okay, it looks like I need 2 pieces of wood, this size for the roof. And then I need 3 pieces this size for the sides and the back. And then I need a piece for the front that has a hole in it. Okay, now how am I supposed to keep those together? Okay, it looks like maybe I put glue here, or I put a nail here. This little thing, I wonder what this little thing is. And they look at the picture. They're talking through using another sensory system of listening and motor to figure out how to get the problem solved. Private speech, egocentric speech. Now, Piaget felt egocentric speech didn't have any purpose, that it really wasn't social. Well, it could be social in the sense that if the child is trying to figure it out and other children are around, they may come over and they want to help and they offer some assistance or their opinion. Maybe they'll hold a piece of wood while the child hammers the nail in or uses the glue or whatever. But eventually, private speech truly becomes private. It's all abstract, cerebral thought process. And the private speech, I do it now. If I'm trying to figure out when I change the bag on my sweeper, I have trouble getting the front piece on. I have trouble sometimes with the bag and how to hook it up over the hose. And then you have to put it down. Then I go, okay, it has these 2 little appendages. I have to stick it down, and then it should close up, and it should meet this other little appendage up here. Oh, it didn't, yeah, but it didn't work. Okay, so then I take it down. Oh, I see. I didn't stick those in far enough. I do it all the time. Well, and then maybe the next time I won't have to do it. Or it depends on how often I have to change the bag on the sweeper. That makes a difference. In the beginning, the child talks out loud, and then it just becomes speech in thought. Vygotsky's most crucial assertion is that private speech provides a foundation for higher order cognitive functions. You're solving a problem, you're concentrating, you're mentally trying to figure out how it works. You're comparing the pieces that you have to the picture. A lot of thought processes going cognitive plasticity. Information is moving back and forth between those 2 hemispheres. And private speech is critical in pretend play. We have to remember that children play differently if they're coming from different cultures. We know that there are some cultures where the man is very dominant. The woman is more subservient and submissive in those cultures. So you may find that within pretend play, there will be more verbalizations from the child in terms of the father. So we do have to make sure that we're aware of what the children is saying and doing and the pretend play and how it reflects the culture. The tasks that we try and solve fall into what Vygotsky calls the zone of proximal development. And the way I look at that, you have sort of two levels with the zone of proximal development. You have intersubjectivity and you have scaffolding in terms of how the child is learning. The intersubjectivity is where you may have 2 or 3 people who have different knowledge, have knowledge at a different level about how to achieve something, how to get something done. And each one of them brings a different skill set to solving this problem. And sharing knowledge, sharing experiences helps all of us arrive at the desired result. I can remember when I was working First Steps, parents would say to me, okay, Patty, it's his birthday, and I don't know what to get him, and I want to get him some things that I think will help him. And his grandma on my side, and his grandma on his daddy's side, they want to know what to get him. And my sister does. But I don't know what to tell him. This is what I tell them. First of all, make sure that you're looking at the toy, the item, and you're looking for the suggested age. Because I will tell you, Fisher-Price, Play School, Little Einstein, and some of the other big name toy manufacturers are right on with that recommendation for an age. And go by that. Many times parents will say, oh, he knows how to do that. He's ready for something that's above his age. Well, be careful. Be careful. So what I suggest, and this is what I do, or what I did when I went into the home for First Steps, I would take a toy, have an activity planned that would be below their chronological or mental age. Then I would have an activity toy that was at their chronological age, and then I would have an item that was above that age. And the reason I did that is because I wanted them to feel success. I wanted them to have something that they could achieve quickly and that I could quickly reinforce. Then when I got to the middle of the road, and also, let me back up. Also, when it was below the chronological age, I could observe their behavior and how they approached solving a problem. I could watch fine motor skills. I could look at attention span. I would sit and wait to see if they asked for help. There's a lot that goes on that you don't have to say anything, just observe. It's all cognitive language. And then an item that is at their chronological age, I wanted to see how well they could perform that. And then I wanted to challenge them and give them something a little bit harder to see if they could do it. That tells me what maybe I need to work on. It also tells me, are they frustrated? Are they going to throw it? How long are they going to work at it? The zone of proximal development helps me decide some of that. Then when we get into scaffolding, it is taking steps, breaking a task down into smaller steps to achieve the end result. And the more that the child achieves competency in their skills and cognition, the less help that they need. Vygotsky views cognitive development within the larger context of social and cultural experiences, and that language directs cognition as much as cognition directs language. For sure. If you want to know a little bit more about the key features of Vygotsky's theory, you can look at page 95 in the textbook, figure 3.1. Okay. Let's talk about perception. And we have talked about perception before. Perception refers to how the person selects, organizes, integrates, and interprets sensory stimulation that they receive. Perception, I'm going to do it again. Perception refers to the processes by which a person selects, organizes, integrates, and interprets the sensory stimuli he receives. The further into perception that we go, the closer to cognition we get, until you can't tell the difference between perception and cognition. It's the ringing of the doorbell. You know the doorbell rings, and you know it's the doorbell, and it's not the oven timer. We can understand the difference between the ringing of the doorbell and the ringing of the timer. You cannot separate cognition from perception. You cannot really separate cognition and language. You really cannot separate perception from language. They all just are intermingled together. Perceptual stimulation is when the child recognizes that stimuli are present and they react. And this is a level that develops early. It's sort of like a reflex. There's the ringing of the doorbell. The child may not know that it's the doorbell, but they have that perception of something is ringing. The cognitive stimulation, as the child develops intellectually, he understands what the sensory stimuli means. He knows that it's now the doorbell. He knows that now it's the oven timer. And he compares it to what he's already learned. So you have that early perception, oh, something's there. Something made a noise. And at that cognitive level, you know what it is. Okay. I think we're going to stop there. And I will be talking a little bit about some visual stimulation. We have talked about the vision before. And we know that the child's visual development is important for bonding, for getting that stimulation from faces, watching the face, the mouth, the eyes move, different angles, different lines. And I will tell you that vision is the first sensory system that children can control. Vision is the first sensory system children control. Within hours after birth, the child can follow movement visually, and we talked about this already, able to focus 7.5 inches. And mother's eyes are almost exactly that 8-inch distance. At 3 months, they're able to turn their heads to something that they want or like or is stimulating, or away if they're bored. Very easily they can turn to and away. They like colors. They like things that move. They like faces. They're interested in real objects. They like the feel, the look, the smell, the sound. So we've got auditory, we have visual, we have tactile, olfactory. There's so many different factors that are playing into that. And think about the educational system and how much of what you learn is visually related. Definite connection between joint attention and bonding, for sure. Okay, I think I will stop there, and I will talk about some additional visual information in terms of development the next time. Okay, I want to remind you that you have something due to me on Monday, the 5th, and this should be 3B. Have a good weekend. It's supposed to be cool this weekend, but it is October. Bye. Have a good day.